I saw them. Sitting at a table for two, candles illuminating her face, the face I knew like the back of my hand. Her hands were intertwined with his, as if each touch was something intimate, something forbidden. Wine filled their glasses, and she smiled. But it wasn't the smile I knew. It wasn't the smile I saw on our wedding day or when he held our son for the first time. It was another smile. A new, intense smile, the kind of smile someone gives when they are in love. My chest tightened, the air seemed to thin, but I couldn't look away. The woman I loved, the woman I built my life with, was there, at a romantic dinner, with another man. I should have left, I should have gone back to the car and pretended I didn't see anything, but something in me burned, something screamed that I needed to face it, I needed to understand. My heart hammered against my chest as my feet dragged me into the restaurant. Every step was a crushing weight. I approached, trying to control the tremor in my hands. They didn't see me at first. I stood there, watching him look at her, like she was all he wanted in the world. And she returned the look. That hurt more than I could have ever imagined. When they finally saw me, her smile disappeared. She pulled her hand back, as if suddenly remembering who she was, or what she had done. He looked at me, confused but not intimidated. No. He looked at me as if I were the odd one out in the situation. As if he had a right to be there with her. I felt the blood rise, and my vision narrowed. The words came out before I could stop them. What the hell is going on here? She choked, the wine glass shaking in her fingers. I can explain. But she couldn't. There was no explanation for that. There was no undoing the image that now burned in my mind. Explain. My voice was louder than I intended, drawing stares from the entire restaurant. He finally stood up, placing himself between us, as if she needed to be protected from me. That was the last straw. I stepped forward, but stopped when I saw the fear in her eyes. The fear that I would make a scene. The fear that I would expose the secret she tried so hard to hide. But why would she be afraid? I was the betrayed one. I was the victim. And yet, I felt like the villain at that moment. He tried to speak, but I interrupted him. Who are you? I spat the words like venom, but he just stared at me. I'm a friend. A friend. Was that what he had to say? I laughed, but it was an empty laugh, the kind of laughter that precedes the storm. A friend? Do you take friends to candlelit dinners now? She tried to intervene, grabbing my arm. Please, we can talk at home. But I didn't want to wait. I couldn't wait. I needed answers right then and there. And then came the revelation that completely disarmed me. It wasn't her who spoke. It was him. I think you already know what's going on. Cold, direct. And in that moment, everything I thought I knew fell apart. She didn't deny it. Didn't try to correct or explain. He just lowered his head, and that was all I needed to understand that it wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't a slip-up. It was something planned, something premeditated. I wanted to scream, I wanted to break everything around me, but I stayed there, motionless. People started whispering, waiters looked on without knowing what to do. She finally murmured, "Let's get out of here, please." But I couldn't move. Everything seemed in slow motion. I saw the way he held her by the elbow, as if he were prepared to take her away, as if she were already his. My world was collapsing before my eyes, but hers already seemed to have moved on. I left the restaurant, feeling everyone's eyes on my back. She came after me, saying my name, trying to explain, but I couldn't hear anything else. All I could hear was the sound of my heavy breathing and the irregular beating of my heart. I got in the car and slammed the door before she could get closer. But even in the silence of the car, their image continued to haunt me. Over the next few days, I tried to pick up the pieces. I turned over memories, messages, gestures that seemed innocent before, but now screamed with new interpretations. When did I lose her? When did she decide I wasn't enough anymore? And, most importantly, why haven't I seen this before? I started to connect the dots, to notice the signs that were there all along, hidden in small changes in behavior. Deleted messages. Overtime that didn't make sense. New perfumes. The weight of betrayal grew with each discovery, and I knew I needed answers. I confronted her again, this time at home. And this time, she spoke. I needed to feel alive again. Those words hit me like a punch. Alive? What did she think we were all these years? Dead? I loved her, I treated her as a priority. And even then, I wasn't enough. She cried, said she regretted it, but how could I believe her? How could I trust someone who had looked me in the eye and lied so easily? But it didn't end there. Because the worst was yet to come. I thought I had seen everything that night at the restaurant, but fate had other plans. Someone recorded everything. The discussion, the looks, the words. And that video spread like wildfire. Within a few hours, I was already the subject of groups, social networks, messages from acquaintances. The public humiliation was just the beginning. The world now knew of my failure, of my role as a betrayed husband. But what killed me was the fact that she continued. She and him. Even after everything. What would you do if you were in my place? If you saw the person who swore to love you forever sitting with another man, holding your hand as if you never existed? If the whole world witnessed your pain and yet you were forced to continue breathing, functioning, living? I thought I knew how this story would end. I thought betrayal would be the end. But I was wrong. Because sometimes the end is just the beginning. Welcome to the channel, where we explore the devastating consequences of betrayal. Make it clear from now on, we do not support or romanticize infidelity. Our stories are fictional, but they carry real lessons about how betrayal can destroy lives, trust and families. Get ready to dive into an intense narrative, full of twists and turns, raw emotions and dark secrets. Now sit back, take a deep breath and be ready to hear a story shocking and unforgettable. Happy listening. Michael always believed that his life was a reflection of the right choices. At 37 years old, married to Emma for 12 years, he felt like he was part of something solid, something that would stand the test of time. They had met at college, two young people full of dreams and plans for the future. She was sweet, with a look that always seemed full of promise. He was determined and with a sense of responsibility that attracted her. Together, they built what many would call a perfect life. They bought a spacious house in a quiet neighborhood, with a well-kept garden and a balcony that became Emma's favorite refuge on sunny afternoons. For Michael, the house represented stability, the home he always wanted to offer her. But, over the years, the initial dreams were replaced by predictable routines. Michael worked as a manager at a technology company and spent hours in the office, trying to ensure the family's financial growth. Emma, on the other hand, left her career as a designer to dedicate herself to her home. She liked decorating every corner of the house and taking care of the garden, but sometimes she would look out the window and miss something she couldn't define. It wasn't unhappiness, but a silent uneasiness that she never dared to voice. Their lives followed a familiar pattern. Quiet dinners, sporadic visits to friends and occasional trips on holidays. Michael always made a point of being present on important dates. He knew how much it meant for Emma to feel valued, and he worked hard to keep the spark of marriage alive. However, the weight of the work began to rob him of these small demonstrations. Romantic gifts became rare, goodnight kisses were automatic, and long conversations were replaced by brief updates about the day. Emma noticed the changes, but tried to ignore them. She told herself it was just a phase, that marriages went through ups and downs. Still, sometimes he felt invisible. She filled the empty spaces by organizing dinners for friends or updating the home's decor. Michael, in turn, felt he was doing everything right. He paid the bills, took care of their future, and believed that was enough. On that particular afternoon, Michael came home early. I was excited to surprise Emma. He had bought flowers and a bottle of wine, something he hadn't done in months. He wanted to make up for lost time, to rekindle the connection he felt was losing. When he entered the house, the smell of vanilla and cinnamon took over his senses. Emma had always loved baking cakes, and that familiar aroma made him smile. He found her in the kitchen, wearing a flour-stained apron. She smiled when she saw him, but there was something in her gaze that bothered him. It was as if the joy on her face didn't reach her eyes. Michael ignored this impression, hugging her tightly. Emma returned the hug, but pulled away too quickly. They talked about the day, about plans for the weekend and about the dinner she was preparing for a couple of friends. Michael tried to ignore the feeling that there was a distance between them, something he couldn't name. Later, as Emma set the table, he watched her in silence. She seemed distracted, her fingers moving the cutlery from side to side without purpose. He came over, held her hand and asked if everything was okay. She smiled, saying she was just tired. Michael wanted to believe it. I wanted to believe that tiredness explained that invisible barrier he felt growing between them. That night, after dinner with friends, Emma was silent for longer than usual. They sat on the porch, and she rested her head on his shoulder. Michael felt a momentary relief, as if that simple gesture erased all doubts. But deep down, something in him remained restless. The following days passed as usual. Michael immersed himself in work, while Emma continued to be busy with household chores. However, he began to notice small changes. Emma started going out more often. He said he needed to distract himself, that he was trying to get back to old hobbies. Michael didn't question it. He wanted to believe that this was positive, that it was part of her effort to feel happier. One day, upon arriving home early again, Michael found Emma's cell phone on the table. The screen lit up with a message, but he looked away, reminding himself that he trusted her. Even so, the unrest persisted. He noticed that she smiled more lately, but he didn't know if that smile was for him. Later that week, Emma suggested they go out to dinner. Michael was surprised and excited. He got ready carefully, chose an elegant restaurant and did everything he could to make it a special night. But during dinner, he noticed that she seemed distracted. She looked at her cell phone more often than usual and, at times, seemed lost in thought. Back home, Michael tried to talk about what he was feeling. She asked if there was anything that worried her. Emma denied, smiling and saying everything was fine. He wanted to believe it, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Over the next few days, Michael began to pay more attention. He noticed subtle changes in her behavior. New perfumes, more elegant clothes and a new personal care routine. He tried to ignore the suspicions that were beginning to arise, but as time passed, those doubts became impossible to ignore. One night, Emma said she was going out to meet a friend. Michael didn't question it, but after she left, he had the feeling that something was wrong. He tried to distract himself by watching television, but he couldn't stop his mind from wandering. I wondered where she was, who she was with and why she couldn't shake the idea that there was something hidden. The next morning, Emma was more affectionate than usual. He made breakfast, kissed Michael enthusiastically, and acted as if nothing had changed. He tried to convince himself that he was just being paranoid, that his mind was creating problems where there were none. But the discomfort continued to grow. Michael began to notice details that he previously ignored. Furtive glances, suppressed laughter on the phone and a new energy that seemed to surround her. He wanted to confront her, wanted to ask for answers, but the fear of finding out the truth stopped him. Everything changed that night when he decided to surprise her again. And that's how he saw her, sitting at a table for two, smiling at another man. Michael couldn't sleep that night. The images of dinner, the looks exchanged, the hidden smiles and the touch of his and Emma's hands continued to spin in his mind. He tried to find a rational explanation, something that would ease the growing pain in his chest, but each possibility seemed more absurd than the last. Her words echoed, asking them to talk at home, promising an explanation that he knew would never be enough. The next morning, the bed next to him was empty. He walked down the stairs slowly, feeling the weight of each step, as if he were crossing a minefield. He found Emma in the kitchen, distractedly stirring her coffee, with the calm expression of someone who had done nothing wrong. She smiled when she saw him, but something about that smile cut him off. He tried to act normally, but he felt the bitter taste of distrust in every word he spoke. During breakfast, she talked about the day, about plans to go out in the afternoon to resolve some issues, but Michael could barely pay attention. He watched her every move as if looking for clues, something that would confirm or deny his suspicions. The delicate perfume she wore seemed to permeate the entire house, a constant reminder of what he had seen. At work, he found himself looking at his phone over and over again. He thought about texting, asking where she was, but he knew that would only make him seem paranoid. He tried to concentrate, but the memories haunted him. He remembered how Emma used to be, the sparkle in her eyes when they planned their future together, the days when he felt like he was enough. Now he felt out of place, as if he had lost his place in her life. In the days that followed, Michael began to pay more attention. He noticed that Emma went out often, but never gave many details. He began to question her schedule, the subtle changes in the way she dressed, the quick phone calls that ended as soon as he entered the room. The tension between them grew, even when they tried to ignore it. That night, while Emma was taking a shower, Michael took her cell phone. He knew it was wrong, but the need for answers spoke louder. The screen was locked, but he knew the password. With his hands shaking, he scrolled through the messaging apps, but found nothing compromising. For a moment, he felt relief, but when he opened the photo gallery, he found an image that made his blood run cold. It was a photo of Emma smiling, wearing a dress he had never seen before, sitting at a restaurant table. I wasn't alone. He was there too. The same man from dinner. Michael dropped his cell phone as if it had been burned. His heart raced, and the air seemed to disappear from the room. He tried to rationalize, find an excuse for that photo, but the pain in his chest gave him no respite. When Emma came out of the bathroom, she found him standing in the hallway, his face pale and his eyes fixed on her. She asked if everything was okay, but he didn't respond. I just said I needed to leave. He walked aimlessly for hours, trying to process what he had discovered. The images repeated themselves in his mind, each detail gaining new meanings. He thought about confronting her immediately, but something stopped him. He needed more. I needed to understand what was happening before acting. Over the next few days, Michael became a shadow in his own home. He watched Emma with an analytical gaze, attentive to every gesture, every word. She didn't seem to notice, continuing with her routine as if nothing had changed. This made him even more uneasy. It was then that he decided to follow her. That afternoon, Emma said she was going out to meet a friend. Michael waited for her to leave and followed her from a distance. His hands were sweating on the steering wheel, and his heart was hammering in his chest. He felt ridiculous for doing this, but the need to know the truth consumed him. When he saw her park in front of a restaurant, the same one for dinner, he felt a sinking sensation in his stomach. He waited a few minutes before getting out of the car. He walked to the entrance and stopped in front of the door, unable to move forward. But then he saw her, sitting at the same table, with the same man. They laughed, leaning towards each other, as if they were in a world apart. Michael entered and stood near the entrance. The noise of conversations around them seemed distant. All he could hear was the sound of blood pulsing in his ears. Emma saw him and froze. The man looked too, but didn't move. For a moment, no one said anything. Then Michael stepped forward. His voice was low, but full of emotion. He asked what was happening, but Emma's response was a whisper that he could barely understand. The man stood up, placing himself between them, and Michael felt anger boil inside him. He asked who he was, but the man just said it wasn't what it looked like. Emma tried to intervene, but Michael stopped her. He asked how many times this had happened, since when it was happening. She tried to deny it, but the look in her eyes said it all. He didn't need anything else. The betrayal was there, exposed, and nothing could erase what he had seen. Michael left the restaurant, leaving Emma and the man behind. He walked to the car, but didn't get in. He stood still, looking at the reflection in the glass. The image of the man holding her hand, the way she smiled at him, all of it haunted him. He knew that night would change everything. When Emma arrived home, she found Michael sitting on the couch, looking blank. She tried to speak, but he interrupted her. He said he knew everything, that he had seen it with his own eyes. She started crying, saying she didn't want to hurt him, that it had all been a mistake. But Michael couldn't hear. As she continued trying to explain, he got up and left the room. He closed the bedroom door and locked himself inside, leaving Emma outside, sobbing. Silence took over the house that night. Michael lay awake, thinking about everything that had happened. He knew this was just the surface. Something else was hidden beneath that betrayal, something he hadn't yet discovered. And he needed to know. Michael stood in the room, staring at Emma as if he were seeing a stranger. She was sitting on the couch, her eyes red from crying, but he couldn't feel sorry. The pain in his chest was greater than anything else. The betrayal had exploded like a bomb in his life, and he could barely breathe. She tried to speak, but he raised his hand, asking for silence. He didn't know if he wanted to listen to her. Part of him needed answers, but another part just wanted to run away, leave everything behind. Emma shifted on the couch restlessly, her fingers tightening the fabric of her pants as if that could contain her anxiety. She said she knew she had no justification for what she had done, but that she needed him to listen to her. Michael laughed, a bitter laugh, the kind of sound that comes when the pain is so great that it finds no other way out. He asked how she could expect him to hear anything after everything she'd done, after everything he'd seen. She tried to get closer, but he pulled back, as if her touch burned him. Emma said she never wanted to hurt him, that she never planned for things to come to this point. She said it started with something innocent, that she felt alone and out of place, that she needed to feel alive again. Michael interrupted her, asking if she really thought he was to blame for that, if she was trying to justify the unforgivable. She shook her head and asked him to stop, to let her talk. She started talking about how she met this man, saying it was through a friend, but Michael didn't want to hear about the beginning. He wanted to know why. He wanted to know when she had decided that their love was no longer enough. Emma stood up, pacing back and forth, as if searching for the right words. She said it all started because she felt ignored, but over time she realized the problem was deeper. Michael asked what she meant by that, and she hesitated. For a moment he thought she was going to lie again, but then she looked straight at him and said she had been lying throughout their marriage. She said that betrayal wasn't the worst thing she had done. Michael felt his stomach sink. He asked her to explain, to say what she was trying to hide. She started crying again and said the man he saw her with wasn't just someone she was seeing. He was someone from the past. Someone she knew before she even met Michael. Michael didn't understand at first. He asked what it meant, why it was important. Emma took a deep breath and said that the man was someone she had had a relationship with before getting married, but it didn't end like she had said. She said that years ago, before she met Michael, she had a serious affair, but it ended abruptly because she cheated on him. Michael interrupted her, asking why that was relevant, but Emma continued. She said she got pregnant, but never told him. She said she abandoned him, pretending she was leaving because she needed time, when in reality she had already decided she didn't want him to know. Michael was silent, feeling the anger building inside him. He asked if he was saying that this man was the father of their child. Emma quickly shook her head, saying no, that the child was Michael's. But then she hesitated, and he knew. I knew it before she even opened her mouth to say she wasn't sure. Emma explained that, when she got pregnant, she was already dating Michael, and that she never took tests to find out who the father was. He said that, deep down, he was always afraid of the answer, but that, as time went by, he decided to believe that the son was Michael's because it was easier that way. Michael felt the world crashing down around him. He asked if she really expected him to believe this was an innocent mistake, that she just didn't know what she was doing. Emma began to beg, saying that it didn't matter who the biological father was, that Michael was always the real father, the one who was present, who cared, who loved unconditionally. He screamed, asking how she could say that, how she could destroy his life so easily. He asked her if she understood what that meant, if she had any idea how he was feeling. Emma tried to get closer, saying that she never wanted to hurt him, that she was afraid of losing him. Michael walked away, saying she had already lost him. He said he didn't know if he could look at their son in the same way, that he didn't know if he could stay in that house, in that marriage. Emma begged him not to give up, so they could take the test and clear up their doubts, but Michael said he didn't know if he wanted to know the truth. The pain in his chest was overwhelming. He looked at Emma and saw a woman he no longer recognized. Everything he thought he knew about her, about their marriage, was destroyed. He asked her if she really thought she could hide it forever, if she thought he would never find out. She cried, saying she wanted to believe that she would never have to tell, that everything would work out. Michael left the house that night, leaving Emma on the living room floor, crying. He drove aimlessly, feeling the weight of the world on his shoulders. I didn't know what to do, I didn't know how to move forward. All he knew was that nothing would be the same as before. And as I drove, the doubt grew. Could he forgive her? Or was that the end? Michael drove for hours but didn't know where to go. The night seemed darker than usual, and the emptiness inside him made the air heavy. He stopped in a deserted parking lot, rested his head on the steering wheel and closed his eyes, but Emma's words kept echoing in his mind. Her every sentence was a knife spinning in his chest. He tried to push away the pain, but it was growing like a wave about to swallow everything. He took a deep breath, but there didn't seem to be enough air. He picked up the phone and thought about calling a friend, but what would he say? How would you put into words what had just happened? No explanation seemed to make sense. His world had fallen apart in a matter of minutes. Emma had lied for years. She had built a life alongside him while hiding a secret that changed everything. The doubt about the paternity of their son now haunted him, and he didn't know if he could face it. After a while, Michael returned home. When he entered, the light in the room was still on. Emma was sitting on the couch, her eyes fixed on the door. As soon as she saw him, she stood up quickly, but he raised his hand to stop her from approaching. She stood there, still, her face marked by tears. He said he only came back because he needed answers, he needed to understand how she had the courage to hide it for so long. Emma tried to speak, but her voice broke. She took a deep breath and started counting. She said that when she discovered she was pregnant, panic took over her. That she was afraid of losing Michael, of being rejected, of ending up alone. She said she tried to justify to herself that if the child was his, then the secret would never need to be revealed. That even if he wasn't, Michael would be a better father than the other man ever could be. Michael exploded, asking if she understood how selfish that sounded. He asked her if she really believed she could decide something so big on her own, as if he had no right to know the truth. She cried more, saying she knew she was wrong, but every year that passed made confession more impossible. He said that when he looked at Michael taking care of their son, he felt so afraid of losing that perfect image that he chose to live in a lie. Michael interrupted her, asking if the man knew. If that man she was with at the restaurant knew about the possibility that he was the father. Emma hesitated for a moment and then said yes. Her response hit Michael like a punch in the gut. He asked since when. Emma explained that the man reappeared months ago, that he sought her out and asked about her son. She said he had doubts, that he wanted to know the truth, but that she tried to push him away. When that didn't work, she agreed to meet him to talk. He said that the conversation started about the past, about the mistakes made, but that, over time, the meetings became frequent. She admitted that she revived old feelings, that she felt torn between what she had and what she could have had. Michael couldn't believe what he was hearing. He asked if she slept with him, if the betrayal was more than emotional. Emma tried to deny it, but, after seconds of silence, she confessed that she did. He said it happened once, that he regretted it, but that it was too late. Michael closed his eyes, trying to process everything. When he opened it, he asked her why she didn't finish it all as soon as she realized she was getting involved. Emma said she tried, but the man threatened to tell everything. She said he wanted to know the truth about his son and that if she didn't help, he would go to Michael directly. Michael paced the room, trying to organize his thoughts. He asked if his son knew anything, if he had been exposed to this situation. Emma firmly denied this, saying she did everything to protect the child. But that didn't calm him down. He said it didn't matter if his son knew or not, because now everything was destroyed. She asked him not to give up, that they try to resolve this together, but Michael shook his head. He said he didn't know if he could look at her the same way, if he could trust her again. Emma walked over and grabbed his hand, but he pulled away. He said he needed time to think, but Emma insisted, saying he couldn't just run away. He asked what would happen if the DNA test showed that the child was not his. He asked if Michael would abandon the child, if everything they had built would end. Michael said that was exactly the point. That he didn't know what he would do because he no longer knew who he was in that story. She continued to ask for forgiveness, saying that everything she did was out of fear, out of love, out of desperation. Michael shouted that love was no excuse for lies and manipulation. He said she had every opportunity to tell the truth and chose to continue lying. Emma fell to the floor, crying, but he was unmoved. He was too tired to feel anything other than anger. Michael went out again that night. He drove to a hotel and spent hours staring at the ceiling. He thought about calling his son, but he didn't know what to say. He thought about looking for the man, but he was afraid of what he might hear. Deep down, he knew that the only way to move forward was to face the truth, no matter how painful it was. The next day, he returned home. Emma was in the kitchen, looking destroyed. He sat at the table and said he wanted to take the DNA test. She agreed immediately, but he saw the fear in her eyes. He said that regardless of the outcome, he needed space, he needed to decide what he was going to do with their marriage. Emma nodded, but asked if he could look at his son without letting this doubt destroy their relationship. Michael didn't respond. The next few days were a blur. They avoided talking about the matter, but the silence between them was heavy. Michael tried to act normal in front of his son, but every time he looked at him, the doubt returned. He tried to convince himself that nothing would change, but he knew that wasn't true. When the results came back, Michael held the envelope for hours before opening it. Emma stood beside him, without saying a word. When he finally tore off the paper and read it, he felt the floor disappear. He closed his eyes, trying to absorb the information. Emma asked what it said, but he couldn't answer. He just put the paper on the table and left the room. Emma stood behind, tears silently falling as she read the words that confirmed what she feared most. The son was not Michael's. She broke down, but she knew that at that moment, nothing she said could fix what had been broken. Michael, outside the house, looked at the dark sky and knew that his life would never be the same. Michael stood on the porch, feeling the cold wind cut into his skin as the weight of the words on that paper crushed his chest. He pressed the envelope between his fingers, as if he wanted to tear it up, erase it, make the printed letters disappear along with everything they had destroyed. But he couldn't. The truth was there, irreversible, and its echo reverberated in every corner of his mind. He looked at the dark sky, but only saw emptiness. I tried to find an answer, but every possibility seemed wrong. He didn't know what he should do, what he could do. Inside the house, Emma waited. Sitting on the sofa, her hands shook as she pressed a pillow to her chest. His eyes were fixed on the door, waiting for Michael to come in, waiting for him to say something, anything that would indicate what he was feeling. His silence was unbearable, but she didn't dare break it. I knew he needed that time. He knew that any wrong word could be the end of what was still between them. When Michael finally entered, Emma jumped to her feet, but he looked away. He walked to the kitchen and filled a glass of water, his hands shaking so much that he almost dropped it. Emma approached slowly, stopping near the table. She wanted to talk, she wanted to say she was sorry, but she knew that regret wasn't enough. The silence grew between them until Michael finally broke it. He asked how she could have done that to him. He asked how she had the courage to carry that secret for so long, knowing how much he loved her, knowing how much he loved that boy. Emma tried to respond, but her voice broke. Michael continued, anger exploding in every word. He asked her if she understood what she had done to him, if she had any idea how much it destroyed him. He asked if she ever thought about the consequences, if she ever stopped to consider what would happen if the truth came out. Emma was crying, but he couldn't stop. He said he trusted her, that he built an entire life based on lies. He said he no longer knew who she was, that everything he thought about her had turned into doubt. Emma tried to get closer, saying that she still loved him, that everything she did was out of fear of losing him. He said he was always the father, that nothing would change that. Michael walked away, asking if she really believed those words, if she thought it was enough to say that she loved him to erase everything that had happened. He said that love was no excuse for lies, that true love required honesty. She begged him not to give up, saying they could still fix things, that they could still be a family. But Michael shook his head, asking how they could continue to be a family when he didn't even know who that boy was to him anymore. He asked her if she really thought she could look at their son without thinking about the man who might be his real father. Emma cried more, saying that she knew she had destroyed everything, but that she would do anything to make it right. Michael was silent for a moment, then said he didn't know if there was anything to fix. He said he needed time, that he needed space to think. Emma tried to hold him back, but he let go, saying he didn't know if he could forgive her, that he didn't know if he wanted to forgive her. He said that, at that moment, he just wanted to get away from her. He grabbed some clothes and left the house, leaving Emma on the floor, with her hands covering her face. Michael drove aimlessly, his mind spinning with conflicting thoughts and emotions. He wondered if he could still be that boy's father, if he could still look at him without seeing another man's face. He wondered if he could live with that doubt for the rest of his life, even though he knew the answer. For the next few days, Michael stayed in a hotel. I tried to concentrate on work, but it was impossible. I spent hours staring at the phone, thinking about calling Emma, but I never had the courage. He thought about his son, how he wasn't to blame for anything, and that destroyed him even more. He tried to convince himself that he could overcome it, but every time he imagined Emma in another man's arms, the anger returned. Emma sent messages every day, asking him to come home, asking them to talk. He said he would do whatever it took to save the marriage, but Michael didn't respond. He didn't know if he wanted to save something that was already so broken. One night, as he stared at the ceiling of his hotel room, Michael thought about his son. She remembered the day he was born, how he held that little being in his arms and felt that everything in his life made sense. He remembered the first steps, the sleepless nights, the laughs and hugs. It made him cry for the first time since the truth came out. He realized that regardless of the result of that test, he would always love that child. But loving didn't erase the pain. He returned home the next day. Emma was in the kitchen, and the look of surprise and relief on her face almost made him flinch. But he stood his ground. She said she was only there to talk about her son, that she still didn't know what she would do about marriage. Emma nodded, saying she understood, but still had hope. They sat at the table and talked for the first time since everything happened. Emma said she didn't expect immediate forgiveness, but wanted to fight for her marriage. She said she was willing to go to therapy, rebuild trust, do whatever was necessary. Michael said he didn't know if he could trust her again, but he was willing to try for his son. He said they needed to think about his well-being before anything else. Over the next few days, they began to organize. Michael returned home, but slept in another room. They held formal conversations, avoiding arguments, but the tension was palpable. Emma did everything she could to show she was sorry, but Michael remained distant. He began to observe his son with new eyes, trying to find features that weren't his. It destroyed him inside, but he couldn't help it. Every smile, every gesture, brought doubt back. Emma noticed, but said nothing. She knew Michael needed time. But he also knew that time could push them further apart. Their lives became a cold, calculated routine. They tried to act like a family in front of their son, but the void between them grew. Michael wondered if this could last or if, at some point, everything would fall apart once and for all. Meanwhile, Emma lived in constant fear that Michael would give up. She knew he was fighting his feelings, but she didn't know how long he could hold out. I knew that their future depended on how they faced this dilemma. And deep down, I feared that their love wouldn't be enough to survive. Michael sat on the park bench, watching the dry leaves fall from the trees around him. The cold wind bit his face, but he barely felt it. His mind was elsewhere, caught up in the whirlwind of emotions that had been haunting him for weeks. Everything he had built, everything he believed to be solid, had crumbled before his eyes. Emma had destroyed his trust, and the weight of her betrayal still suffocated him, even after all the time that had passed. He looked at the horizon as if searching for answers, but all he found were questions that gnawed at him inside. Emma was at home, sitting on the edge of the bed in the empty room she used to share with Michael. The space seemed larger, colder, as if reflecting the distance that had grown between them. She ran her fingers over the sheet, remembering all the nights they laughed, talked and hugged there. The memories now felt like ghosts, reminding her of what she had lost. She wanted to fix everything, but she knew that some wounds were too deep to be healed with words. Still, he kept trying, holding on to the hope that Michael wouldn't give up on them. The days dragged on, and the tension between the two became more evident. Michael tried to continue with the routine, but every look at his son brought with it the shadow of doubt. He loved that boy, but he couldn't help the tightness in his chest when he thought of the man who could be his real father. Emma noticed Michael's conflict, but didn't know how to help him. Each attempt to get closer was met with silence or short words, and this made her feel more and more helpless. One night, after putting his son to bed, Michael came downstairs and found Emma in the kitchen. She was washing the dishes but stopped when she saw him. For a moment, the two were silent, just looking at each other, until Michael finally spoke. He said he didn't know what he felt anymore, that he was tired of carrying that pain, but that he couldn't just erase everything he experienced with it. Emma held back the tears and said she understood, that she was willing to wait as long as it took for him to decide what he wanted. Michael approached her slowly and asked if she was sure she was willing to carry that weight with him. Emma nodded, saying there was nothing she wanted more than to have the chance to rebuild trust between them. He looked into her eyes, searching for something to confirm that promise, but all he saw was a reflection of his own pain. Without saying anything else, he left the kitchen and went to the room he now used alone. The next day, while driving to work, Michael made a decision. He couldn't continue living in that uncertainty, on that emotional tightrope. He needed to confront the man who had re-entered Emma's life and cast doubt on everything he believed to be true. She arranged a meeting with him at a discreet cafe and arrived minutes before the scheduled time. When the man entered, Michael felt his blood boil, but he took a deep breath to stay calm. They sat across from each other, and Michael got straight to the point. He asked if he knew the damage he had caused, if he was aware of the impact of his actions. The man tried to justify himself, saying that he also had the right to know the truth, but Michael interrupted him, asking if he really cared about his son or if this was just a way to regain control over Emma. The man hesitated before answering, and that was all Michael needed to know his suspicions were right. Michael stood up, making it clear that he would not allow this man to destroy his family any more than he already had. He said that, regardless of who the biological father was, he would always be the real father, because he was the one who had been present at every important moment. He left the cafe with a strange feeling, as if he had finally regained some of the control he had lost. When he returned home that night, he found Emma sitting on the porch, hugging her knees. He walked over and sat down next to her. He said that he had spoken to the man and that he was determined to fight for their family, but he made it clear that it would not be easy. Emma cried with relief and promised that she would do everything in her power to prove that she was worthy of the effort. Over the next few months, they began attending couples therapy. The process was painful, with difficult conversations and inevitable tears, but they slowly began to rebuild the connection they had lost. Michael still struggled with the ghosts of his past, but he began to see Emma in a different light. She had made serious mistakes, but she was also willing to face them head-on, without running away from the consequences. The son continued to be the link that held them together. Michael decided that it didn't matter what the DNA test revealed, because the love he felt for him was greater than any biological bond. And over time, that decision brought a peace he thought he would never feel again. Emma, on the other hand, has learned to deal with guilt. She knew she could never erase what she had done, but she was determined to move on and become a better woman and wife. She faced the judgmental looks and the whispered comments, but she kept her head up, focused on rebuilding Michael's trust and preserving the family she had nearly destroyed. The man who had re-entered Emma's life disappeared as quickly as he had appeared. Maybe because he knew he would never have a place in that family. Maybe because he realized he couldn't compete with the bond Michael and his son shared. Years later, Michael and Emma still carried the scars from that period, but they had found a way to turn them into reminders of how hard they fought to keep their family together. They knew they would never be the same as before, but they had learned to value what they had and to no longer give space to secrets and lies. Their story is a reminder of how destructive betrayal can be, but it also shows that redemption is possible for those who are willing to face the consequences of their mistakes. Now we want to know what you thought of this story. Leave your comment below with your opinion. Do you believe that forgiveness is possible in cases like this? Or do you think some betrayals are unforgivable? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more impactful stories like this. Remember, the channel does not in any way support any type of cheating. Thanks for listening to the end, and until the next story.